How did that teacher got fired at your school? My math teacher was a volunteer first responder in New York. She left school to help out during 9/11 and was fired for not showing back up for 2 weeks. The good-looking math teacher had a reputation for hooking up with senior girls, days after graduation. He did this almost every year. People even started to make bets on who Mr. S was going to hook up with this year. There was nothing technically illegal about it because they were all 18 and graduated, but it got to the point where parents were calling in and saying they didn't want their daughters in his class. They were finally able to fire him when he showed up to work drunk. Our beloved teacher, Mr. Mound, had worked there for 29 years without incident and was one of the best teachers there. His classroom was always a laugh riot. He was the best roaster and encourages us to roast him properly. He never failed to get us motivated, and a lot of us owe our career inspiration to him. He was fired because he had jokingly smacked a student on the back of his head for making a stupid comment. It was like something out of a sitcom and all of us expected it and loved it. Yet one student, who was new at the school, was culture shocked by this. He thought it was strange but hilarious. He told his mom offhandedly and his mom became the Karen. Never mind that the student was the teacher's godson, no physical contact was allowed, says the Karen. He was suspended with pay for 3 months pending investigation, then was let go because the Karen twisted the story and it blew up around the school. A year later, the teacher won both the lawsuit against the school and the libel case against the Karen, with her son being one of the key witnesses. We still keep in contact and roast him for getting rich over smacking kids around. An hour before the state championship football game, the head football coach, pay teacher, got a student who wasn't on the team to come up to him and pretend to shoot him. He used fake blood and everything. No one knew it was going to happen and his own son was on the team. We lost the game too. Male substitute teacher that regularly taught at my Catholic high school who wasn't fired, but banned from teaching in our female PE class after we reported him for repeatedly instructing us to stretch in positions that were sexual, inappropriate. For example, he asked us to bend over with both hands against the wall and shake our hips back and forth. Bonus. He subbed for my geography class the following year and I asked to go to the bathroom during one of his classes to take care of my feminine issue. He asked me what kind of feminine issue specifically. I was too embarrassed to say it was my period, so I said, well, you know. To which he replied, yes, but I want to hear you say it out loud. Just creepy. Male 50-year-old teacher. Too many infractions to name just one. Said about a girl student, the only time your mouth should be open is when my pants are around my ankles. Got high with the basketball team. Would say, show us your tits, under his breath about hot chicks to any dudes that were around. Pushed me when I was taking a piss at the urinal and said, don't piss on your hands, son. A history teacher who tossed out the entire history curriculum to talk about serial killers. We had a swim coach teacher that was so dumb that students would ask what he could have possibly gotten a degree in. He would flirt with the girls' team and throw a tennis ball at people he didn't like. She didn't get fired but quit. Some students in class found out she miscarried and started hounding her till she broke down and cried under her desk. It was 7th or 8th grade. Had a teacher charging parents extra money for a field trip. Was pocketing the extra money. He was a middle school gym teacher with a history of being a creep with girls. I remember hearing my older sisters talking about him and telling their girlfriends to steer clear of him. I briefly dated the woman who actually put him in prison. He grabbed her hand and forced her to jerk him off in his office adjacent to the locker room. During his trial, women came out of the woodwork to say he'd done things to them too. He was my high school chemistry teacher who was caught on to catch a predator and was always acting odd towards the boys in the class. He was caught trying to meet up with a 13-year-old at the back of a Walmart. He is no longer teaching at the school, and last I heard, he is staying in the state it happened, awaiting sentencing. One last thing. He was the men's water polo coach as well. For high schoolers. Yikes. One of the elementary school teachers at the district I went to get arrested for making his class worship him like he was a cult leader. He was totally bonkers. Oh boy. Where to start? An elementary school nurse was fired for taking the kids' medications. The high school band teacher slept with a 15-year-old. The swim coach left a hotel that he was at with his mistress drunk and killed someone with his car. My high school had like 400 students. Not just that teacher, but the principal. He'd gotten wind that he might be fired because of less than ideal job performance, so he decided to drum up sympathy by belly stabbing himself in the men's room and blaming a student. Said student was arrested, but the police were immediately suspicious of his story when they noticed his shirt was unharmed. In other words, whoever stabbed him courteously lifted up his shirt beforehand so as not to tear a hole in it. He wound up being forced to resign, in addition to getting probation and a heavy fine. I was in elementary school in the late 90s when our school finally got hooked up with internet. I don't know if it was readily available information back then that your history could be accessed, but we had a teacher watching CP who got caught because he didn't clear his history. He was the biology teacher and had a plant set up, but it needed a bit more warmth, so he rigged a coffee timer to an infrared lamp and set it up wrong. The plants caught fire, burning down first the room they were in, the chem lab stockroom, and then the rest of that wing of the school. Hey, if you like the video so far, consider subscribing to the channel and liking the video for more. When I was in 6th grade, the teacher of the other class was pregnant and often had a sub. The sub got fired, but since he was there so often it felt like he was a normal teacher. He was pretty weird though and did a bunch of weird things. Some of these include bringing beer to class and drinking it. Nobody believed the kids when they'd talk at it. Answering students' questions very wrong and yelling at anyone who corrected him. Forgetting the kids had recess even when the bell rang and wouldn't let the kids outside. But the final straw that got him fired was when this kid asked to go to the bathroom and he screamed at him. He called this 11-year-old a cunt, a bitch, fucker, shithead, all the nasty bad words that would freak out a kid, all for asking to go to the bathroom. In front of the whole class. Obviously, the kid started crying and begged to talk to the principal, and the sub just screamed at him more. My teacher from down the hall heard it and rushed over. Yelled at the sub, took the kids into his room, and called the principal and the vice principal over. The bus driver I had in 5th grade was a total nightmare. He'd get us to school on time, but we'd often get home very late because he'd stop the bus to have screaming meltdowns. This was a bus of 5th grade kids, and while sometimes we could get chatty or rambunctious, no one was doing dangerous or delinquent stuff. Most days, we just get on the bus, sit down and chat with friends, and wait to be dropped off. But that was too much for this lunatic, and if he felt that kids were talking too much, or somehow, being disrespectful, he'd pull the bus over and scream at us. At length, he'd scare the really little kids, and if you tried to apologize or stand up to him, he'd just get louder and angrier. He never touched any of us, but he'd get so mad, we'd worry he was going to shake or spank us. He'd insist that everyone is perfectly still and silent, real easy for a terrified kindergarten kid, right? And every little thing he perceived as going against that order would start the screaming again, and restart the clock on the wait for him to start driving again. We got home late often. A few times I remember getting home around the same time as my dad, who had a pretty long commute to and from his 9-to-5 job. I have no earthly idea why none of the parents ever said anything about this, but us kids were too terrified to tell on him. Toward the end of the year, I think a few of us did. I turned him in to save my own hide. My mom started yelling at me for getting home late like I had any autonomy as a 12-year-old who rode the damn bus home from the next town over, and I just told her he liked to stop and scream at us, and he wasn't brought back the following year. As an adult, I have a lot of questions for the adults in this situation, and I sincerely doubt that any of their answers will impress me. The dude clearly hated his life, but that's no excuse to take it out on a bunch of helpless, trapped kids. You can share your own story down in the comment below, and thanks for watching the video.